Today we're going to talk about how you can be a writer when you hate writing. Yes, you heard me right. Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation about how you can be a writer if you hate writing. This might seem like a slightly confusing topic for some, but I actually know for a fact that there are a lot of people that fall into this category, including myself. So we're going to talk about how you can know if writing is really for you, how to do it, how to get yourself to do the writing even if you don't like it, and more along those lines. So first, a little bit about me. I have written 14 fantasy novels so far as of this recording. I write a lot of words in the form of blog posts for Kindlepreneur every single day and also for my own websites. Oh, there you go. I write for my own websites every single day. And I don't like writing. Now, this may come as a surprise to people. The question I often get asked when I say this is, why would someone who hates writing even want to be a writer? Which is a very good point, because you would think that we sort of would have weeded ourselves out by now. And because if we don't enjoy writing, then why aren't we just going off and doing something else that we do enjoy? Well, the answer is pretty nuanced, and the main thing is, first we need to define what writing is, okay? When I say I don't like writing, I am specifically referring to one tiny part of the writing process, which is the actual writing down of the words on the page of that first draft. It is not my favorite. It is my least favorite part of the entire writing process. But the thing is, writing has many parts. There's writing the first draft, which is, like I said, the part that I don't like. There is outlining. There's creating characters. There's building worlds. There's the editing. There's the marketing. I can say with absolute certainty that with the exception of writing that first draft, I love all of these other aspects of writing. So when I say I hate writing, I really just mean I hate one tiny little bit of writing. And that is also what I have found to be true with other people that are similar to me in this respect. Usually they don't actually hate writing. They just hate one little tiny part of it. And the rest is they love. It's what brought them to this. And so for me, especially outlining, building worlds, and marketing are my absolute favorites. And so I will spend all the time in the world on those things if you let me. Unfortunately, just doing those things will not write a book. And so I have to get through the other things and figure it out and move on from there. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do if you fall into this category, what to do if you don't really like writing, or a lot of this can also work with any of these other steps. If you don't like editing, for example, or you don't like marketing, a lot of this can also apply to that as well. So first, we have consistent habits. Now this one is actually probably the most important one on this list. A lot of the times when Stephen Pressfield, for example, talks about resistance in writing, we all often feel that resistance to writing. Or to another part of the writing process. And that's a problem, but one of the ways to significantly decrease that resistance is to make it a habit. Because every time you make a decision and you take an action, you are depleting what they often call decision fatigue. And every time you do it again and again and again, that decision fatigue actually goes down because you start wiring your brain to say, hey, at this time, at this, on this day, I am doing this thing. And the more you do that, the better it gets. There's a lot of research on how long it takes to properly form a habit, and I think it really just depends on what the habit is and who you are. But usually estimates come between 21 days and 90 days. I've seen 66 days proposed as an average. So set a goal to get 66 days of consecutive writing or whatever it is. And then the second big part about forming consistent habits is to make them, as James Clear says in Atomic Habits, stupidly small. So small that it is hard not to do the thing. For example, if you wanted to start a habit of doing push-ups every morning, start with one push-up. Okay, so what is the equivalent of that for writing? I'd say write 100 words or just a couple of sentences, but make sure you're doing it at the same time and with the same triggers and all of that each day. And you can then work up from there. You can move to 15 minutes of writing, you can move to 30 minutes of writing, and so on and so on and so on, and until you got this. I went through a phase of burnout a while back that was hugely impactful for me, and it took me months before I was writing again. And this is kind of the way I pulled myself out of it, was with these consistent habits. So that's very important. Second, self-care. Also, possibly I'm going to say these are all the most important on this list, but this one is more important than we often give it credit for. Okay. Currently, I'll tell you a little story. After I went through burnout, like we said, I went through a period, and I won't give you all the specifics but I had some significant health problems that led to 4 months bedridden with severe nausea. That was absolutely debilitating. And I come to find that most of these things were caused by, well, I have a couple of health issues. The most obvious one is I'm well overweight, and I've spent a lot of time trying to work on that. But turns out I have a food addiction, which is a real thing. There's a lot of research on that. And it wasn't until I found a program that helped me manage that food addiction that I started to see some real change. And I'm down from my highest weight. I'm down about 90 pounds actually, um, and still going. Yeah, but interestingly, one of the things that I noticed as I started to be healthier, and I started doing other things like making sure I was supplementing on certain nutrients that are really good for brain health, and make sure I wasn't deficient on those, because most of us are, things like vitamin D and magnesium. As I did that, a lot of the things that I thought were huge barriers for me, like just not having the energy to write, just went away. Okay? A lot of us have problems with health, and we don't even realize that health is the underlying issue behind it. So, getting a good amount of sleep, eating a good diet, not having anything with sugar in it. I know that's like a big deal for some people, but sugar is a drug, and it is so bad at causing us to lose focus and causes pretty much every health issue on the list. Um, and then other forms of self-care, so meditating, getting enough exercise, um, all of these things are hugely important because they will tremendously skyrocket your productivity and help you get past a lot of those barriers that you think you have for why you can't write. Now, of course, it's not going to do everything. Sometimes people have certain mental illnesses and whatnot, but even in those cases, it will go a long way towards making things even better for you. Next, find the right why. Okay? The right why is, there's a great book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and it's all about finding that core belief, that thing that really lights you up, that makes you excited. I don't really have too much to say about this because it's sort of something that is entirely different for every person. But if you can tap into that core thing that really makes you want to work, anytime you can tap into that, that'll help give you motivation to keep writing even when you may not want to. That's number 3. Number 4, dictation. So now we get into some of the more tactical recommendations, and I just love this image. Don't dictate like this into your microphone. But ultimately, dictation is a really good way to kind of remove that barrier that many of us have to writing. I picked up dictation about a year ago, and it changed how I viewed everything. And I shelled out a bunch of money for the right software, and it was absolutely worth every penny. Now, like immediately after doing it, especially for nonfiction, like some of the articles I wrote, it would cut the amount of time it took to write that article in half. And not only that, but it actually seems to cut back on the decision fatigue a little bit because things seem to flow more smoothly. And, when you're typing things out by hand, it can really get old and dull and tiresome after a while, even just writing a couple thousand words. And dictating helps remove all of that. Now, there is a little bit of a learning curve to dictation, and so it's definitely something you want to be committed to figuring out, but it's one of my favorite tools for authors who want to get past their fear of writing and just get into it. Because once you've written even just a couple thousand words with dictation, a lot of those barriers, like having to speak your punctuation and everything, tend to just go away. Now, the last thing I have on here, kind of similar to dictation in terms of the function that it serves. You might have guessed it given the nature of this channel, but it is, oh, sorry, I forgot one. Ha! Co-writers, ghostwriters. So this is how we would do it back in the day when we wanted to be more productive. We would just not do it ourselves. We would hire somebody else to do it. Now, this is a absolutely viable option today, especially co-writers. If you're willing to split royalties with a co-writer, that is the easiest way to get into it. And I'm currently in the early stages of co-writing a book with someone, and it's still early, but I am really enjoying that process so far. And if you have money and can afford it, ghostwriting is also a really good option there if you don't want to be writing the book. And this is also a great way to write a lot more books. I know for many authors, myself included, we have too many ideas and we have these big worlds that we want to flesh out, and we know that we're just not going to be able to write it all, even with the best productivity software out there. And so co-writers and ghostwriters are a great way to deal with that if you're able to do that. So that's another way to get past that fear of writing, is to work with a co-writer. And co-writers are also really great at helping you keep you accountable, so you can do your part, but it also cuts the work of doing that book in half. So that's a great thing. All right, last one. I already gave it a little preamble, but it is try AI. Okay. AI is turning out to be one of the best productivity assistants in practically in human history. It's doing for writing and art what the calculator did for math, which is one of my favorite analogies that I've heard people say. Now, there is, of course, a lot of controversy for AI, and I'm not going to talk about it in this video. It's beyond the scope of this video, but I will say one thing. That decision fatigue that I've talked about, AI almost completely eliminates that. I found that sometimes, in order to get good usable words for my book through AI, it still takes a lot of time and can sometimes be as much time as I would have spent typing it out by hand, but I feel far less exhausted at the end of it. That decision fatigue, that creative drain that I would get when writing is just not there. And it's a wonderful tool. And what that has done is, even though sometimes I don't get much more written per hour, I can often go for much longer in the writing process simply because I'm not as tired, I'm not as drained. And so AI is only getting better. And I know that as long as I can keep improving my writing skills and I keep improving my AI skills, the ability to prompt and work with AI in an efficient way, and then as AI keeps getting better, eventually all of those things are going to continue growing with each other, and the books I'm going to be able to produce with AI are going to be absolutely incredible. And I just can't wait until we get to that point. So that's my last tip on how to be a writer even if you don't enjoy writing. All of these things are going to help you, especially dictation, especially AI, but definitely putting those habits and doing everything you can for your health and all that. So let me just talk to you a little bit about my process, okay? This is what I do. First, I focus very heavily on those first two that we saw, the health and the habits. I've spent a lot of time getting to the point where I write and have my business work time from 7 to 9 every night, and it's pretty much every night I do that. And I'm not always writing in that time, but probably 9 times out of 10 I am. I'm producing content of some kind at least. And from there, I will usually spend most of my time either working with dictation or with AI or a combination of the two. Usually by now I've worked with AI to have a good idea of where it is strong and where it is weak. And so those areas where it is strong, I'm able to leverage that. I'll say, hey, this section of this article really doesn't need to be written by me. Any sort of generic answer will do for this little part. And so I'll just write that in AI, glance over it real quick to make sure it's accurate and that the language is good. And then I'll just slip that in there. And then the parts that are more important for a actual human to be talking, I will dictate that. And it ends up being a little bit of mix of everything. And that's why I like the term AI assisted writing, because very often AI really is just an assistant for little bits and pieces where I know AI will be able to do that pretty well and usually better than I could, or at least far faster and more efficiently than I could. And so that is my process. For fiction, I have a slightly different process. I have traditionally spent more time of my own writing or dictating without the use of AI. And in my AI video series, which you'll be able to see, I have one video on that so far on how to write a book with AI. I'm going to be documenting my process as I write a book pretty much from scratch using AI as heavily as I can. I am going to be doing a lot of my own editing of that work and adding little bits and pieces to the scenes because I think that'll be necessary to make it a good book, something I would feel comfortable publishing. But AI has gotten to the point where it only needs a little bit of touching up after you've done the right prompts and everything. And so I'm looking forward to that process. If that interests you, go ahead and check out my channel. Give me a follow, give me a like, whatever it is you want to do, and I'll see you in the next video.